I buried my 8-year-old son Noah alone under the relentless Savannah sun. The air was so thick with humidity, it felt like breathing through a damp towel, and sweat ran down my back in my black dress. I kept looking toward the cemetery gates, waiting for a car, a text, anything. But there was nothing. No mother, no father, no sister. Just me and the heat and the awful silence of a grave that felt too small. I thought they were stuck in traffic. I thought maybe my sister's flight was delayed. I made excuses for them until the first shovel full of dirt hit the wood. Then my phone buzzed in my purse. I pulled it out, hoping for an apology. Instead, I saw a notification from my mother. It wasn't a text. It was a link she had shared with me. A Zillow listing for a sprawling 5-bedroom estate on the coast captioned, "Fresh Start." I stared at the screen, my vision blurring from the sweat and the tears. The price was listed right there, $1.5 million, the exact amount of my son's life insurance and trust fund combined. While I was putting my child in the ground, my family wasn't grieving. They were shopping. Before I tell you what I found in my mother's text history that made me skip my own grief to destroy them, drop a comment and let me know where you're watching from and what time it is for you right now. I want to see how far this story travels. I drove home in silence, the air conditioning in my old sedan blasting against the sweat drying on my skin. The back seat was filled with the flower arrangements from the service, the white lilies giving off a scent so thick and cloying it made my stomach turn. It smelled like a funeral parlor, like finality, like the end of the world compressed into a 2-mile drive. When I unlocked the door to my apartment, the quiet didn't feel peaceful. It felt heavy. I walked into the kitchen, threw my keys on the counter, and stared at the empty space where my son used to sit for breakfast. I waited for the breakdown. I waited for the knees to buckle, for the sobbing to start, for the grief to swallow me whole. But it didn't come. Instead, a strange, icy clarity settled over me. It started at the base of my spine and worked its way up, cooling the heat of the Savannah sun, sharpening my vision until everything in the room looked high definition and hard-edged. I opened my laptop. I needed to know. I logged into the flowers website, the one my mother used for every birthday and anniversary. I had her password because I was the one who usually ordered the gift she took credit for. I found the order for the funeral spray. There was the date stamp, order placed 14 days ago. They hadn't missed the funeral because of a last-minute crisis. They hadn't been delayed by traffic or a sudden illness. They had pre-ordered the flowers 2 weeks in advance. They had known 14 days ago that they wouldn't be standing beside me while I buried my son. They had scheduled their absence like a dentist appointment. I didn't scream. I didn't throw the laptop across the room. I just sat there, and the last little piece of hope I had been holding on to. The childish hope that my mother loved me, that my father protected me, snapped. It was a clean break. I opened a new tab, my banking portal. I pulled up the joint credit card I had shared with my sister, Ashley. I had added her as an authorized user 3 years ago when she claimed she needed help building credit. I scrolled through the recent transactions. While I was at the funeral home picking out a casket, she had spent $400 at a Sephora in Atlanta. While I was writing my son's eulogy, she had dropped $200 at a sushi restaurant. I clicked Remove Authorized User. Confirmed. The card was dead. Next, I navigated to the smart home app for the family vacation cabin in the Blue Ridge Mountains. They called it the family cabin, but my name was the only one on the deed. I had bought it with the settlement from my divorce, a place for Noah to see snow. My parents used it every other weekend to host their friends playing the wealthy retirees while I paid the property taxes. I selected the digital lock. Change access code. I deleted my father's code. I deleted my mother's code. I deleted Ashley's code. I set a new master PIN. Access denied. Keep going. Streaming services. Amazon Prime. The shared cloud storage where they kept their photos. I went down the list methodically, severing the digital tendrils they had wrapped around my life. I remembered what my mother had said to me just a week ago when I told her I was struggling to organize the service. She had looked at my drafting table covered in my botanical illustrations and sighed. "Emily, you just aren't equipped for the real world," she had said, her voice dripping with that fake sympathy. "You play with your coloring books while the adults handle the business." Coloring books. That's what she called my career. That's what she called the work that paid her mortgage when she forgot to send the check. I looked at the screen. All the accounts were locked. All the cards were canceled. All the access points were closed. They thought I was weak. They thought grief had made me soft, pliable, a broken thing they could mold into whatever shape they needed. They were about to find out that grief doesn't always break you. Sometimes it burns away everything that isn't essential, leaving you harder than diamond. I closed the laptop. The apartment was still silent, but it didn't feel empty anymore. Felt like a war room. I sat in the dim light of my kitchen, the laptop screen casting a cold blue glow across my hands. My fingers hovered over the keyboard, but my mind was drifting back, replaying the highlight reel of my life in this family. I needed to understand why. Why had I let it go on this long? Why had I paid their bills, fixed their messes, and swallowed their insults for 32 years? I pulled up a spreadsheet I had hidden deep in my hard drive. I called it the ledger. It started 4 years ago, right after my father Robert retired early because he deserved a break. Row 1, $96,000. That was the total I had paid toward their second mortgage. Every month, like clockwork, $2,000 left my account and went into theirs. I remembered the first time I sent it. My mother, Susan, had called me in tears, saying they were going to lose the house. "We sacrificed everything for you girls." She had sobbed. "And now, we have nothing." I had just landed my first major contract illustrating a rare plant guide for a university press. I felt rich. I felt guilty. So I paid. And when I told them, my father didn't say thank you. He just nodded and said, "Good girl. At least you're making yourself useful." Making myself useful. That was my currency. That was the rent I paid for occupying space in their lives. I scrolled down. Row 12, the influencer trip. Ashley had wanted to go to Tulum for her birthday to build her brand. She couldn't afford the flight. My mother had cornered me at Sunday dinner. "Your sister is so talented, Emily. She just needs a break. You have savings. Don't be selfish." Selfish? The word they used whenever I tried to keep something for myself. I paid for the flight. Ashley posted 30 photos from that trip. I wasn't tagged in a single one. Row 24. The car accident. Ashley had totaled her BMW while texting. My father had co-signed the loan. He was panicking about his credit score. I paid the deductible, $500. It wasn't just the money, it was the way they trained me. It was like they were feeding a stray dog. They starved me of affection for weeks, months, making me feel invisible. And then just when I was about to walk away, they would throw me a scrap. A compliment on my hair. A hug that lasted 2 seconds too long. A text that said, "Thinking of you," and I would eat it up. I would wag my tail and come running back thinking, "See, they do love me. If I just try harder, if I just give a little more, it will stay like this." Psychologists call it intermittent reinforcement. It's the most powerful way to condition a behavior. It's how you train a rat to push a lever until it dies of exhaustion. You don't give it a pellet every time. You give it a pellet randomly. The unpredictability keeps the hope alive, keeps you addicted to the possibility of love. But looking at the ledger now, seeing the cold, hard numbers, the addiction broke. My eyes landed on the most recent entry. 2 days after Noah died, a package had arrived at my door. My mother had texted me, "Sent you something to help. Love you." I had opened it with shaking hands, thinking maybe it was a photo album or a blanket or something to comfort me. It was a box. Inside was a stack of envelopes, past due notices, credit card bills, a foreclosure warning for the beach house, all addressed to Ashley or my parents, and on top, a yellow sticky note in my mother's handwriting. Do the right thing, Emily. Family helps family. That was their condolence gift, a bill. They didn't see a grieving mother. They saw an inheritance. They saw a payout. I closed the spreadsheet. The shame I had felt for years. The shame of not being enough. Of not being like Ashley evaporated. It wasn't shame anymore. It was fuel. I had spent my life building them a safety net, stitching it together with my own money and self-worth. Now I was going to cut the ropes and watch them fall. The banging on the door started at 2 in the afternoon. It wasn't a polite knock. It was the heavy, entitled pounding of people who believed they owned the building. I checked the peephole. Robert and Susan, my parents. I unlocked the deadbolt. I didn't have time to say hello before my father pushed past me. The heat of the Savannah afternoon, following him in like a wave. He didn't look at me. He walked straight to the kitchen, opened the refrigerator, and started pulling things out. Expired, he muttered, tossing a carton of milk into the trash. Wilted, he said, throwing away a bag of spinach. He was performing a wellness check, but it felt like a raid. He was building a case. She can't even buy groceries. She can't function. My mother stood in the hallway staring at the walls. I had hung my latest series there. Intricate, large-scale watercolors of decaying magnolia. It's so dark in here, Emily, she said, her voice trembling with a rehearsed fragility. And these drawings, they're obsessive. It's not healthy. You're spiraling. I leaned against the door frame, crossing my arms. What do you want? We want to save you, she said, turning to me with wide, wet eyes. We spoke to a specialist. He agrees. You're displaying signs of a psychotic break. The isolation, the aggression, cutting off your sister. She reached into her designer handbag and pulled out a thick document clipped with a blue backing. She placed it on the coffee table. It's a voluntary conservatorship, she said. Just for the financial side. Just until you're stable again. We'll manage Noah's trust. We'll make sure the bills get paid. You don't have to worry about a thing. I looked at the papers. They wanted control, not just of the money, but of me. And if I don't sign? I asked, my voice flat. Robert slammed the fridge door shut. Then we call the authorities, he said, wiping his hands on his pants. We file for an involuntary 5150 hold. We tell them you're a danger to yourself. We have the neighbors' statements. We have the emails you sent, Ashley. I froze. I hadn't sent Ashley any emails. They were forging evidence. I looked at my mother. She wasn't wringing her hands anymore. She was watching me with a terrifying serenity. This is what psychologists call the savior gaslight. It's a specific form of narcissism where the abuser convinces themselves they are the martyr. They don't see themselves as thieves stealing a dead child's insurance money. In their minds, they are the heroic parents stepping in to rescue their broken daughter from her own wealth. They have to believe I'm crazy because if I'm sane, then they're just monsters. And their egos can't handle that reality. We just want what's best for you, Susan whispered. Do the right thing, Emily. Sign the papers. Don't make us have you committed. I walked to the window. Outside, parked in the fire lane, was Ashley's white Range Rover. She wasn't coming inside. She was sitting in the driver's seat, her phone mounted on the dashboard, the ring light reflecting in her sunglasses. She was live streaming. I could practically see the caption intervention day. Pray for my family. Mental health awareness. She was monetizing my breakdown in real time. She was building the public narrative that I was unhinged so that when they took the money, the world would applaud them for stepping up. They had it all planned. The legal threat, the social proof, the emotional blackmail. They had trapped me in a corner where my only options were to hand over the money voluntarily or be dragged away in a straitjacket while they took it anyway. I turned back to them. I needed them to leave before I did something that would actually prove them right. I need to think, I said. You have 24 hours, Robert said. Tomorrow at noon, or we call the police. They left the papers on the table. As they walked out, my mother paused and touched my cheek. Her hand was cold. We love you, Emily, she said. We're doing this because we love you. I locked the door and slid the chain into place. I looked at the conservatorship documents. They thought they had checkmated me, but they forgot one thing. They were playing checkers. I had hired a grandmaster. I picked up my phone and dialed David. David's office felt more like a bunker than a law firm. Servers hummed along one wall. Linda, my late husband's aunt and a retired judge, sat at the head of the table, sharp-eyed and unsentimental. We found why they're desperate, David said, sliding over a tablet. It wasn't just debt. It was a ledger from an illegal Atlanta gambling ring. Ashley's name was everywhere. She owes $400,000, David said flatly. Your parents co-signed. These aren't banks. These are loan sharks. They have 48 hours or it gets violent. Everything suddenly made sense. The panic, the threats, the sudden concern for me. They didn't want to save me. They wanted my son's trust fund. And they're ready to destroy you to get it, Linda added. She opened a folder. They prepared court filings claiming you're suicidal. Fake emails, affidavits. I pulled out my phone. They built a story. I said, I have data. My smartwatch showed I was in deep sleep the night they claimed I was manic. Security footage proved I was quietly painting when they said I was destroying furniture. David smiled. If they submit those lies, it's felony perjury. We need a sting, Linda said. I'll give them what they want, I replied. I'll pay. At my parents' house, I played defeated. Robert lectured. Susan smiled coldly. Ashley waited impatiently. I transferred $450,000. They toasted. Then Robert's phone rang. All our accounts are frozen, he whispered. Federal hold. I straightened. Yesterday I filed an IRS whistleblower report. The ledger flagged your accounts. That transfer triggered an automatic freeze. Ashley screamed. The loan sharks saw the money. Exactly. I said, you're trapped between the IRS and the mob. I walked out as the screaming started. The fallout was swift. My parents lost the house. Ashley fled the state. I received a whistleblower reward. Enough to start over. I used the rest of my son's trust to create the Noah Morgan Astronomy Scholarship. I didn't lose my family. I stopped carrying them. And that was how I finally learned to let go.